What is up, my Squirtleites? It is I, your king, welcoming you back to more Let's Play Destiny. In the last episode, we went over the Prison of Elders, Court of Oryx, and Archon's Forge. And in this episode, I want to preface this right off the bat. If you want to see gameplay, action, all that kind of stuff, and don't want to just listen to me talk for countless minutes about lore and very specific weapons in this game, this is the wrong episode. You can click out now if you do not care about any of this extra lore stuff. You don't care about learning about the weapons, the exotics, the most interesting weapons in the game, at that. If you don't care about that stuff, click out of the video. That's all this video is going to be. I'm going to be talking about exotic weapons and exotic armor. We're literally just going to be looking in a kiosk for like most of this episode. So if that's not your thing, go ahead and click out. There is more to come after this, don't worry. So we're going to start with the exotic weapons. And as I said before, there are a few I do not have, but I will be able to go over them nonetheless. So all of the ones in this area right here, all of these, as well as all of, or at least starting from here onward, are all the exotics from the raid. Okay, they are exotic versions of the standard primary weapons that could drop from the raid. In year 3, they made these exotics so that they could have elements on them. In year 1, they actually had elements on them normally, which was considered a bit overpowered because they were legendaries that could have elements on them. And primaries just generally don't have elements on them, so that's why they turned them into exotics so they could have that. We're not going to go over those. Those are irrelevant and kind of unimportant. But I am going to be talking about the rest of these exotics. So there are a couple that I am missing that I can't talk about, but again, I'll get into those in a minute. So let's talk about, let's start with the Zalo Supercell. So this was introduced in year 2. This is essentially an auto rifle variant of Bad Juju. So going over the perks, arc projectiles have the chance to chain lightning, much like what Stormcallers can do when close together. On top of that, with this one, double kills with this weapon charge a small amount of super energy and return ammo to the magazine. So every other enemy you kill brings back ammo into your magazine, as well as charges your super energy up like Bad Juju. It's a definitively worse perk than Bad Juju, but this is a much more effective weapon, and it comes with the base arc element on it, which is, before this point, before year 3, was the only exotic to have an element on it, which is kind of one of the things that made it so darn useful. It's got a couple weapon skins on it, as you can see. There's Shock Hazard, which I think is the better of the two looking ones, and then there is Not a Toy, which kind of gives it this camo effect to it. Really, the best way to spec it was all stability-based. You get Brace Frame, you get Persistence, you get Smart Drift Control to help it out a little bit. You can have Aggressive Ballistics if you want to go with Braced Frame, and then you can up the damage up to, well, a lot, actually. So, very good exotic, very solid one. Again, the element is kind of what made it so strong in year 2, and one of the reasons a lot of people liked to use it. Then we move on to Hardlight. Hardlight is a gimmick weapon, unfortunately. Now, Volatile Light. Rounds fired from this weapon have no damage fall off, which is probably the best part about this perk, and overpenetrate targets and ricochet off hard surfaces. This thing can be made to be extremely steady with both fitted stock and CQB ballistics. You can have max out stability. The problem is this gun likes to rattle around a lot when you're firing it, and not to mention the intrinsic perk. Overpenetrate targets and ricochet off hard surfaces is a lot more useful than useless, excuse me, than it sounds. It really doesn't do much for you. Like, you can do some funny things with this, like bounce it around corners and do damage and stuff like that, but other than the gimmick factor, this is not a very useful perk, and is really the only thing that makes this a unique gun. Aside from the fact that it is an Omelon auto rifle, and you can't really get those normally, there's really not a whole lot going for this gun. It is actually one of the worst exotics for most of Destiny's life cycle, and it went through several buffs to even make it this good. So, yeah, not a very good weapon. Then we have Suros Regime. This is from year 1. Now, in year 1, it was not black and red like this. It was actually white and red. Suros Regime in year 1 had Focused Fire, as well as this Suros perk. The bottom half of each magazine deals bonus damage and has a chance to return health on kill. That was made new in year when this was brought back in year 3. Normally, this always returned health on a kill. On every single kill, it would always bring you back health, and it also had the Focus Fire perk. This new one, however, the better perk is Spinning Up. This, as you can see, increases your stability, and the longer this weapon is fired, the faster it fires. Now, the impact does not change when this spins up, so when you get the Spinning Up perk to activate, this is hitting at the normal high impact of an auto rifle and shooting a lot faster. So with the Spinning Up perk activated, this thing can be a beast, but aside from that, it's really not anything to write home about. The Suros perk was a lot stronger in year 1, where it always healed you on every kill, and when auto rifles were a lot more powerful. Now here is a look at the skins, which I think that is the cooler one, is the Basilisk's Glory. Now we move on to Monte Carlo. This is probably one of the most interesting exotic ideas in Destiny. In practice, it is very cool, or in theory, it's very cool. In practice, not so much. So Monte Carlo, the entire idea with this is a melee-based gun. Dealing damage with this weapon reduces your melee cooldown and grants a chance to fully charge your melee ability with each kill. On top of that, it is all about hip firing. This is a weapon that you're supposed to run around with, fire it up really close, and punch things constantly, and you just constantly get your melee back, which with certain builds, if you can build around this gun, is actually a lot of fun to use and quite effective at that. In all activities, no, this is not a very reliable perk, but if you're like running strikes or story missions and stuff like that, and you want to get a melee focused build, like let's say with like Sunsinger or with any of the Titan subclasses, this is a lot of fun to use because you basically always have your melee up, and if you can get like double melee builds, you can just tear through enemies and constantly keep activating your melee bonuses. It's also got some pretty cool skins. I love Super Spy, and I also love Royal Flush. I think they're both very cool looking. So either one, go for it. Monte Carlo, fun weapon, but not really the most effective ever. Then we have, and actually before I go on to this, I'm going to assume that this one right here is Touch of Malice, which was the Taken King raid exotic. In the Taken King, you have to collect these things known as, what are they called? They're these fragments that you collect, and there's 50 of them. I collected a couple of them in the playthrough, but there's these fragments you're supposed to collect, and upon collecting 50 of them, you're allowed to unlock the quest to get Touch of Malice, which Touch of Malice is an auto rifle that fires in full auto, and whenever you reach to down to 1 ammo, it will keep firing, but as it fires, it has both a good thing and a bad thing about it. As it fires, the damage is increased by quite a bit, actually. But the downside is it hurts you as you fire this last round. So when you reload, this perk goes away. But when you go back down to just 1 round left in the magazine, this perk continues to activate. It basically hurts you, but does extra damage as a result. This was useful in the raid because there were there were areas in the very last portion of the raid in King's Fall where you would not take damage at all inside a certain bubble, and you could just fire this thing off indefinitely and do extra damage. It was, in fact, the best way to kill Oryx, pretty much. So that is what Touch of Malice is. Then we have the last word. Think the Fan the Hammer that McCree does in Overwatch. Now you can just do that indefinitely. Now, of course, the trade-off with this, it is the fastest firing hand cannon in the game, but the trade-off is range. You have to be very close to doing damage with this thing. Not to mention the stability isn't that great either. Now, you can buff it a little bit to control it a little bit better. But don't be fooled by the rate of fire. It should be much higher, honestly. Because this thing, it fires very quickly and does a lot of damage in short succession. But the magazine is small, at only 8. The stability isn't that great. The range is pathetic on this thing. And it is mostly about firing from the hip. In fact, last word, the perk improves stability and target acquisition when firing from a hip, and as well as the hip fire bonus accuracy perk. This is a PvP weapon entirely. In year 1, it was incredibly overpowered because last word perk also gave bonus headshot damage when firing from the hip. And on top of that, there was no such thing as range fall off for hand cannons in year 1, like at all. Like, so you could shoot things from pretty far away with this. Not very easily because it's kind of a full auto hand cannon, but you could still do a lot of damage, and it made this weapon extremely overpowered. Now that damage fall off actually exists in Destiny and hand cannons aren't stupid with their range, the last word is a lot more of a balanced weapon. It's also got some pretty darn cool skins with Sequel and Appendum. Both very nice looking. I like the Appendum one a little bit more because it fits more of that Western feel. On top of that, the last word actually has some pretty interesting lore to it, believe it or not. So, the last word was once owned by this guy, Shin Malfour, who basically ended up having to go in a duel against this guy, Driggs Promised, who owned a different exotic hand cannon that we're going to talk about. Unfortunately, Driggs Promised is the one who killed him. He killed Shin Malfour. So, this is what we're left with is the last word, which was his specific weapon. Shin of Malphor was he was kind of a, like it says, he was a renegade. He didn't really follow the beliefs of normal guardians. He went throughout the world just kind of doing good. He was just kind of a vigilante, almost. But he's kind of like the Batman of the Guardian universe when you think about it. And this was his weapon until he was eventually killed. Killed by, and I guess I'll just skip over to it, the guy who had this weapon, Thorn, Dredgenyore. This weapon used to be known as the Rose, but it eventually became corrupted when Dredgenyore fell to the darkness. Dredgenyore was a turned guardian, which is a very rare thing in the lore indeed. He wasn't like Toland, who was so fascinated by it, but never quite turned evil. He actually turned evil, Dredgenyore did. He went by a different name before that, and the name before escapes me, but eventually, when everything became corrupted, he ended up wielding Thorn. Thorn is also a very infamous weapon in the Destiny life cycle, because this weapon used to be extremely overpowered. As you can see right here, rounds pierce targets and cause lingering damage over time. In year 1, the lingering damage was automatically a tick of 7 and would tick for a certain while. You could actually two-shot people in the head and they would die, even though this is the lowest impact class of hand cannon. Because of this perk, you could two-shot someone and they would die because of it. This was in year 1. They eventually reduced it, but it was still so powerful in year 2 that it could three-shot someone in the body and they would die, which is never supposed to happen with this archetype. Eventually, they changed the Mark of the Devourer so that it's a really, really low amount of damage, but it stacks eventually, thus doing more damage the more shots you land, which in PvE makes this thing a little bit better. Or when firing on enemies that have, or people that have supers up, it's a little bit better, but it kind of negates the possibility of killing things in only 2 or 3 shots. So it's got Send It, Perfect Balance. Either one of the Send It is pretty much the better one, and also has Final Round, which you can, which is very rare on hand cannons these days. In fact, I don't even think you can get it anymore. So that last weapon, last shot does do bonus damage. And then of course you also have your muzzle options, and here are the skins, which is Rose of Acid. I love that one, and then Rose of Corruption, which I also love that one. They are both very sweet looking. As you can see, this is a hive-based weapon as well. Then we move on to Hawkmoon. We've been over Hawkmoon. I don't really have much more to say about it, but this is it once again. And then we move on to No Time to Explain. Remember that cutscene from back in the vanilla storyline? I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. That's where this comes from. This is an exotic version of the pulse rifle that the stranger had, and we have No Time to Explain. Now this one is a little bit better. It comes intrinsic with Headseeker, also gets full auto, which is very similar, and it also has all of these perks, which are exactly what her weapon had. However, rewind again. Precision hits are immediately returned to the magazine. As long as you are landing headshots, you will not run out of ammo. Ever. With this thing. It will shoot indefinitely. While that sounds, again, ridiculously overpowered, it's only okay in theory. It's not the most amazing thing. Not to mention the muzzle flash and the sights on this gun are very obtrusive and hard to see through. So, again, in theory, it's very, very, very cool. But in practice, it's mostly just okay. It actually can be pretty good for bosses because they do have very huge critical hitboxes. So you can pretty much just fire on a boss indefinitely. But the archetype of this weapon and the fact that it has no other damage bonuses don't really make it that effective. But it can be a lot of fun to run around with nonetheless. We've already been over Bad Juju. Let's move on to Red Death. Red Death, this was another weapon that used to be overpowered back in the day, back when it was of the higher impact of pulse rifles and could thus kill people in 2 shots. Now, it is no longer the case. So, Red Death. Each kill heals you and speeds up reloads. This is the best part about this gun and why this gun is, even today, super good, and especially in PvE. Every kill heals you. Now, granted, they nerfed that recently in year 3. It would start health regeneration, much like it basically worked like Lifesteal does on the Voidwalker. It would start health regeneration on a kill. Now it just gives you a chunk of health every single time you get a kill, which is still good. If you're mowing down ads, it's still fine. You basically can't be killed as long as you're killing things very, very quickly with this. But yeah, it is a pulse rifle, by the way, if I didn't make that clear. Not an auto rifle, even though it's shaped like one. It is, in fact, a pulse rifle. Vanguard policy urges Guardians to destroy this weapon on sight. Now, the lore behind this weapon is that it is an auto rifle that was converted into a pulse rifle. There is, in fact, an auto rifle that looks exactly like it, known as the Red Spectre. See the blood right there? That's Guardian blood. Yeah, this thing has killed a lot of Guardians. Like, not just killed them, like it's completely killed them. Whoever invented this weapon was a really twisted, messed up dude and killed a lot of Guardians with this, which is why that is Vanguard policy, but we run around with it anyway. There's White Witch, a very awesome one, and Steel Witch, also a very awesome skin. Boolean Gemini. This weapon is got quite an interesting history behind it. So this was actually data mined in year 1, and a lot of people were expecting it to appear at some point in year 1, but it didn't appear until year 2. I've been over this weapon before. We've already gotten it in the main playthrough, or I've already gotten to it. But Boolean Gemini, not a very good exotic weapon, honestly. Like with aggressive ballistics, it's a little bit better in PvP. Does come intrinsic with high caliber rounds, which is actually the best part about it. But as you can see, bonus agility on precision kills stacks up to 3 times, and bonus armor on non-precision kills stacks up to 3 times. Not very good perks, and that's really the best thing this has going for it. It does have unflinching, it does have perfect balance, but it's pretty much, this is like a beginner's exotic weapon. In Taken King, this weapon was very, very easy to get, as you got it through like the first and earliest quest line in the game, and it is given to you by Petrovenge, which is kind of, again, why it's a beginner's exotic, is really what it was meant to be. I'm like, it's fine, there's nothing bad about it, but there's nothing inherently great about it either. It's an okay weapon. It's got a very cool firing sound to it, though. In this slot, we have Outbreak Prime. Outbreak Prime is the Wrath of the Machine exotic, and it is a pulse rifle that is a very fast fire rate pulse rifle, and it has a very long-winded quest line to it. I can't actually even explain it to you because I've never done it. But it's very, very detailed, very in-depth. There are plenty of videos out there. I know a YouTuber named Dado has one of the best guides on how to get the Outbreak Prime. But basically the entire idea behind the Outbreak Prime is that when you shoot things, it brings out little SIVA nodes that will then hurt the enemy. They'll little cluster of SIVA. It's almost like a mini Gjallarhorn. Like, obviously the rounds that pop out aren't as powerful, but it still does a lot of extra little damage to whoever it hits, to whatever it kills, because it will pop out without killing the enemy. You just have to do damage to them, and it will continually spawn the nodes. But it'll also hit things around them as well. Actually a very good weapon, and is exceptionally good on Fallen because it does bonus damage to splicers as well. Ace of Spades. This is the Hunter exclusive weapon, which is, opposed to the Talalok, which we got on our Warlock already. Ace of Spades has Firefly on it, which is awesome for a hand cannon. It also comes intrinsic with Third Eye. Radar stays active while aiming down sights. And then this, Maverick. Precision kills move 1 round from your ammo reserves into the magazine, so you never have to reload with this thing as long as you're firing with it. Which is, again, pretty darn cool. Now, it's a mid-impact rate, which is really good because you can activate the Firefly perk. And again, like it says, you almost never run out of ammo with this thing. As long as you've got something in your reserves, which, again, is pretty darn cool. It just encourages precision shots, and I like that. It's a very solid weapon. Then, excuse me, we move on to Jade Rabbit. And do I not have the Titan exotic in here? I'm just suddenly realizing that. No, for some reason it's not showing the Titan. I have it on my other account. It's just not showing it. Huh, that's weird. Anyway, I'll talk about it. You know what? I'll just talk about it now. So the Titan exotic variant is called Fabian Strategy, and I don't know why I'm not seeing it in here. But Fabian Strategy is an auto rifle that basically the closer you get to enemies, the faster it fires. It basically changes its fire rate. It's supposed to be a frontlines weapon, quote unquote. Out of all of the subclass exotics, and yes, it does have crowd control on it, which is probably the best part about it. But out of all the subclass exotics, it is probably the weakest. And you know what? It just occurred to me that it's probably not popping up because I'm on my Hunter. I didn't think it wouldn't. It just wouldn't pop up in general, but whatever. Anyway, Jade Rabbit. This is a high impact, low rate of fire scout rifle. Now you're probably going 7 in the mag. That's horrible. Well, the intrinsic perk is what makes this thing actually really good. This was another weapon that was data mined, and it was known as the Fate of All Fools. Now, the Fate of All Fools is in Destiny. It is its own gun, but there's only one player in all of Destiny that has it. Now, it's got the same perk set as this weapon, but it is on that player's account, and only on that player's account. There was a player who was, I believe he's a vet, or he has some sort of, I obviously don't want to be insensitive about this, but he has an illness of some sort, and he basically wrote up a post on the Bungie forums about how Bungie games make his life better, and how Destiny has kind of given him a second lease on life and stuff like that. And Bungie, kind of touched by his entire story, gifted his account the Fate of All Fools weapon, which was this. He was the only person to have it in all of Year 1. In Year 2, they brought it back as the Jade Rabbit, which is why it looks like this. It's the Fate of All Fools is still a completely unique looking weapon, which I think is pretty cool. I'm glad they brought us this weapon so that players didn't miss out on it, but he still has a unique looking gun that no one else has, which I think is very, very awesome. And the intrinsic perk, Fate of All Fools, chain body shots to gain bonus damage on your next precision shot and return ammo to the mag, actually makes it so you pretty much never run out of ammo on this thing as long as you're chaining body shots. You could basically, you shoot an enemy 3 times in the body and then shoot them in the head, and you'll get all of your ammo back. Not to mention, you can get extended mag to buff it up to 11. You also have spray and play to immediately reload when you run out, and you have Zen Moment to work on that stability, that really low stability you have. These 2 perks, pretty much useless. It's an okay exotic. It's not anything special. Multitool, on the other hand, is very special and probably the best all-around weapon in the game. So, high magazine size, for starters. It did come with intrinsic with high caliber rounds back in the day. Doesn't have that anymore, unfortunately. Comes with third eye, which is really awesome. The fastest possible reload speed, great stability, a field scout, which increases that ammo capacity, and this weapon boosts movement speed. Yes, you can walk and sprint faster while holding this, and fires on a hair trigger, so you can easily get your shots off. This thing destroys in the Crucible, and it's very, very good in PvE. Was better in PvE when it had high caliber rounds, but this weapon is just an all-around, well-designed exotic. This is kind of what exotic should be. It doesn't have anything super flashy or super niche about it. It is, in fact, the most, like, standout all-around weapon, and it also has some pretty darn cool skins. I love Multitool. Most people do. I don't really know anyone that hates Multitool, except for those who get killed by it way too much in the Crucible. This is a very good weapon. It's kind of always been good, no matter what meta we've been in. And oh, I just love this weapon. This is the kind of weapon that I want Bungie to design and give us in Destiny 2. It's just something that's so suitable for everything as this one. Like, niche ones have their place, but we need these kinds of weapons. So I've already been over Thorn. Then we have Necrochasm. This is, well, actually, let's go over this one first, which is the Vex Mythoclast. Vex Mythoclast is the exotic for Vault of Glass. Vex Mythoclast is a fusion/auto rifle. It basically has no charge time and fires like an auto rifle, but it's like a fusion, and it has a solar element to it. Vex Mythoclast just kind of melts through things, and that's really all there is to it, is the fact that it's kind of like a fusion rifle, but it's a primary and fires like an auto rifle. It was a lot better in Year 1. In fact, it was super overpowered in Year 1 until they nerfed its damage a little bit. But was still a very, very good weapon on all accounts, and could do a lot of damage very quickly and just kind of melt through things. Very fun weapon. It also had crowd control and Zen Moment on it. Necrochasm was a very terrible weapon in Year 1 and is actually a lot better now. This is the Crota's End based exotic. It's a very high rate of fire, as you can see. It also does come with fitted stock to help its stability. It also comes with Cascade intrinsically and Zen Moment to also help its stability, which is very good on an auto rifle, by the way. And then Cursebringer. Kills with this weapon trigger a Curse Thrall explosion, which is better than Firefly. It also doesn't require headshots. Before in Year 1, it did. You had to get a headshot to trigger this perk, but now you don't. This is actually a very good weapon in PvP and even better in PvE now. Very, very strong weapon, very fun weapon to use. The only downside is, because it's the high rate of fire type of auto rifle, you'll find yourself running out of ammo a lot with this thing, even with a lot of ammo and reserves in a high magazine. And that is its skin. Very, very cool weapon. So we're skipping all those. Now we can move on to special weapons. Well, actually, before I do that, I got to talk about this one, because this is actually technically a primary weapon. No Land Beyond. This is the worst PvE weapon in the game. Like, you would be better off using a green weapon than this. I'm not kidding. This is a horrible, horrible PvE weapon and is specifically designed for PvP. Like it says, primary care can be equipped in the primary weapon slot. It's a sniper rifle. It's still one-shots in the head, but it's bolt action. Yes. Yeah. Now, there is a way to do a animation cancel on the bolt action to make you shoot slightly faster, but with 6 rounds in the mag and only 6 more in reserves, don't ever bring this thing in PvE. It also has iron sights, which is interesting. It has mulligan, so you can have about a 20% chance of a shot returning to your returning ammo if you miss. You do get snapshot, and you also get the master, increased precision damage, and kills briefly increased damage against the next target. Don't be fooled by this impact and rate of fire. Other snipers of this impact do a lot more damage than this one does. So again, terrible for PvE. But the master can be kind of interesting because you can pretty much kill people out of their supers after you've headshot someone before that. But you pretty much only get 1 shot to use it. Yeah, not a PvE-oriented weapon. This is just for messing around in PvP. And there is its skin, which is pretty cool, I think. I like the skin. It's got like a tripod on it. But had to talk about that because that is a primary. Let's move on to the special weapons now. Talked about Telesto before. Telesto is kind of like the Needler from Halo. Right here. Unplanned reprieve. Fusion projectiles attach and detonate with a delayed void blast. So your initial hit usually isn't what kills them, it's the void blast after that kills them. Battle Runner, kills with this weapon grant a brief boost to the sprint's top speed. This is a lie. It actually grants a brief boost to your normal walking speed. It does not affect your sprint speed at all, which can be useful, especially if you get caught in a sprint lock or something like that. And then Harbinger's Spark. Multi-kills with this weapon spawn orbs for your allies. Because of the nature of this weapon and the fact that you kind of spray the ground with this thing, this is actually a very good perk, and you can generate a lot of orbs and strikes and stuff like that. It's got a couple skins. Queen's Command basically makes it like the Reef, and then Lingering Vestige, which I love the way that looks. I think that is so pretty. Although, when I see that, though, I think that this weapon should be Arc or something, but whatever. Plan C. This is... oh, man, this is an interesting weapon. Look at how gnarly this fusion rifle is. So, charge and equip times are very short immediately after weapon swap. So, if you switch to this weapon, this is why it's called Plan C. Switch to this weapon, it will instantly fire. Instantly fire its shot, and will swap it very, very quickly. It's like you have a quick draw perk on it. So, every so often, like let's say like an enemy, like a shotgunner is charging you or something like that, if you switch to this, you can immediately vaporize them. It also has this hip fire perk to help with that, so you don't have to aim down sights. All in all, this is a good fusion rifle on its own because of its archetype, but that perk can make for a lot of, can save your butt a lot of times. It is actually as fun and cool as it sounds. Just swap to it real quick and vaporize something. Very, very nice to have. Not to mention you do have perfect balance and Hammer Forge to make the range stupid ridiculous or to make it stupid balanced. You can also change its impact archetype to make its base charge rate a lot faster, because after that initial fire, when you swap, it just fires like a normal fusion rifle afterwards. But a good one at that still. Again, it's still a very good high, impact archetype, and also max reload speed does indeed help. Queenbreaker's Bow. This is one of the Prison of Elders exotics. There are 3. This one is essentially a Vandal sniper rifle. Like, exactly. It's a sniper slash fusion rifle. It's got a scope on it, and it fires a concentrated single bolt that can, well, do headshot damage. This is, again, a PvP-oriented weapon. Now, granted, unlike most sniper rifles, this thing can hold like 30-something in reserves, like 30-something rounds. So it can be okay for PvE in that regard, but I wouldn't recommend it. Also, changing its sights, because it's got like those 2-prong sights, because Vandals have more eyes than we do, can change its archetype. With the combat sights, it's more of a faster charge rate, but can still one-shot people in the head in PvP. This is really what people use in PvP more, and Marksman's more what people use in PvE. Plus, with Hidden Hand, this thing has like the worst and most heavy aim assist in the entire freaking game. So, fun weapon to mess around with, but do remember that the bullet still has travel time, and it is a little bit delayed because you do have to charge up your shots. So, yeah. Then we move on to the Chaperone. This is Amanda Holliday's weapon. Yeah, I know, she has one. She's not even a Guardian, but she has one. Mother had a shotgun we called the Chaperone, kept us alive out there before we got to the city. The Chaperone is related to the last word because it is one of the only other weapons made by Tex Mechanica. So it's got the chaperone. The weapon fires a single precision slug. It's the only slug round shotgun in the game. The rest of them have shells. This one has a slug. And also it grants an agility boost when you're running with it. Roadborne. Precision kills briefly grant bonus handling range and precision damage with this weapon. You can actually kill things from a long range if you hit them in the head with this thing. In the body, not so much. It also does fire very quickly. Also a single point sling. And it also makes this like whip sound effect when you reload it. It's kind of cool. And then the Survivor. 3 rapid precision kills while born on the road is active. Will return 2 rounds to the chamber. This is the only aspect of it that makes it sort of useful in PvE, but this is almost exclusively a PvP weapon. It has like the craziest range of any shotgun due to the nature of the slug, like one-shot potential, but you have to be precise with this thing. With other shotguns, you don't have to be precise because, well, other shotguns don't do headshot damage. Invective. This is Ikora Ray's shotgun, which is very cool. So this thing, full auto, is intrinsic. It also has final round, which is good, especially considering the low impact nature of this shotgun. And Invective. This weapon regenerates ammo over time. Now this thing regenerates a full clip of ammo every 30 seconds. So it's not as quick of a regeneration as you think, but you'll never like fully run out of ammo with this thing, which is kind of nice. Not to mention with its full auto, with the full auto perk, you burst down things so quickly and you kind of use it for such mass bursts of damage, not to mention final round, that you kind of need this to keep this thing active. However, it has been a sore point of the community for a while because any weapon with ammo regeneration is a sore point of the community because people can cheese this in PvP where special ammo is limited. Here are its skins. I love this one more than the other one. As cool as Iconoclast is, Storm's Reproach is just, oh, so awesome. Universal Remote. This is a primary shotgun. You're probably going, wow, that's ridiculous. Well, it does balance out. It has a magazine of 3. Okay. Doesn't really have the best stats. You really have to work on it to boost it. Not to mention Universal Remote range and precision damage increases greatly while aiming down sights, which is broken because this thing can't do precision damage anymore. I know. And it does also have crowd control. So it balances out. You'd think that's overpowered. It used to have a lot more in the mag. I think it used to have 5 or 6. But it balances out by only having 3 in the mag. It's honestly a terrible weapon in PvE, but in PvP, it can be fun if you like to use shotguns all the time, although you are going to be sacrificing range unless you have a sniper in your special slot. We have the 4th Horseman. Now, quickly take note of this range. Okay. Now take note of the rate of fire and this perk. This weapon can be fired in full auto mode. This thing empties its magazine like instantly, like all 5 rounds, gone. Very, very fast. That's the only good thing about it. You have to be right in something's face to kill it. It also does have return to sender. Kills with this weapon have a chance to grant bonus ammo to the magazine. And it also has the slowest reload speed in the history of forever. So this is more of just a fun utility weapon, but for the most part it kind of sucks. As pretty as it looks. I think it's a very cool looking weapon, but it mostly sucks. This is very good for like doing a ton of damage on one thing at once. Like if you really need to kill a major, this thing will kill a major probably as well as anything in the game. That's not a heavy weapon. So if you want to really kill a major, sure. Other than that, I would avoid it. Lord of Wolves. This is basically what the captains run around with. This is their shotgun. This thing fires in bursts of 6 rounds. As you can see, it has a magazine of 30, but it's basically 5 shots is what it means. Hip fire, Devil's Touch, kills with this weapon, rally nearby enemy allies with +3 recovery, last 30 seconds. Don't be fooled by the range because this has a projectile shot on it. So it does have damage fall off, but for the most part, this thing can put out high amounts of damage. This is one of my favorite weapons in the game, actually, because of it. It really can burst things down very quickly, and it does have a very good utility for your allies. And not to mention, it does have pretty insane range. But the fact that it has travel time on its shots make it definitively worse in a one-on-one versus normal shotguns. And that is its skin. Perfected Predator basically makes it Siva-esque, which I think is awesome looking. Then we have Driggs Promised, the last of the Prison of Elders. And this is what the Dregs use, basically. This is the sidearm. This also has travel time on it, so it's not hit scan. It has a sidearm. But high ricochet shock rounds with enhanced target acquisition. tracking rounds, basically. This thing will track enemies, but they're not the most reliable. It also has Grave Robber, which is a horrible perk. Melee kills with this weapon is equipped, while this weapon is equipped, have a chance to refill their magazine, which is very, very rare. And reserve ammo, which is intrinsic on all sidearms. Not a very good weapon. There's a lot of... This is almost definitively worse than any other sidearm just because it has the tracking, and you never use sidearms in PvE anyway. So, not really that great. It's cool in practice, but not... Or in theory, but not in practice. Zen Meteor. So, I love the way this weapon looks, by the way. Zen Meteor, Dynamite. Grant explosive rounds. Rapid kills with every round in the clip. Load an extra higher damage round for 5 seconds. So, if all 3 of your rounds kill something, with the kill, you get a 4th round, which basically lights the gun on fire. It's a very cool effect. And when that lights on fire, whatever you shoot is pretty much gonna die. It's just like an explosive laser beam. In fact, that's why it's dynamite with a laser beam. See, the extra round from dynamite causes the massive explosion. So this can actually kill multiple enemies. You can even shoot it at the ground and cause a huge explosion, killing a bunch of things. That is also a Queen reference, dynamite with a laser beam. That it is meant to be. But the inherent explosive rounds and the fact that the this really high damage round is in there is awesome. Not to mention, if you shoot a Guardian in the body with this high damage round, because you happen to somehow get that, it will kill them. But I mean, if you got those 3 rapid kills, you kind of deserved it. So whatever. Anyway, Zen Meteor, very fun weapon, but it's honestly not the most effective thing. Not to mention, you pretty much have to kill like basic little peons with this thing to get the dynamite perk to activate, which you're not usually doing all that often in PvE anyway. Patience and Time. Patience and Time is not a good sniper rifle. I'm going to say that right off the bat. It's not. It has a very awkward scope, and its ability, you gain active camouflage, basically makes you invisible while aiming down sights, is also not that great because most people can see you. It's okay in PvE because then enemies will lose track of you, but the scope on it, again, is awful. It does have Third Eye, it does have Field Scout, which is very nice on a sniper rifle, but other than that, it's not a very good weapon. Like, it's a gimmick weapon. You gain active camouflage while aiming. That's it. It is a gimmick weapon. It just doesn't do enough damage either. It's the wrong archetype you want to be using. So, not the best weapon. And then we've already talked about the Trespasser. Go on to Hereafter. This is like a Halo sniper. Like, this is exactly what this reminds me of, a Halo sniper. It's got a square scope. Like, when you look at it, it's actually a square scope, which is interesting. Crouching increases scope zoom and makes it easier to aim under fire. It gives you unflinching while also making you zoom in further so you can be a lot further away, which is honestly not the best considering the archetype. Perfectionist. Magazine is refunded if all shots fired are precision kills. Very hard to do, but if you can get it to proc, good for you. And Blinding Light. Precision kills with this weapon cause a bright flash that can blind nearby enemies. This is actually pretty useful in PvE. Not that useful in PvP, like ever. But this weapon has an extremely high aim assist on it. So that is probably the best thing about this weapon, is it's very high aim assist, and if you like the scope style on it, this is a good weapon for you. If not, it's not a very good weapon. Black Spindle. In year 1, this was the Black Hammer and was a legendary drop from Crota's End. It can no longer be gotten as a legendary drop, except for in the original one, and you can only get a year 1 variant. But this was basically the perk. White Nail. Rapidly landing 3 precision shots will refill the magazine from your reserves. Now, in year 1, it wouldn't refill it from your reserves. It would just refill the magazine, and you'd never frickin' run out of ammo. Now it's from your reserves, which is a lot more fair. It also does have Mulligan, which has a chance to return ammo directly to the magazine. So, if you're just... This is like one of the best boss damage weapons in the entire game. If you're constantly landing damage on the boss, just planking him in the head 3 times in a row... It just keeps filling your... You just never have to reload. This is like the ideal weapon for raid bosses. Especially for like the War Priest in King's Fall and stuff like that. Very ideal weapon for those kinds of scenarios is Black Spindle. It's also got some cool skins on it. Ragabone. And Cold Between Stars, which makes it like a Taken variant, which is very awesome. Alright, that's not... I'm not actually done here. Collection 2. All right, let's go move on to the last of them. So, Sleeper Simulant. Okay. Sleeper Simulant is a fusion rifle. It's a laser beam. It's just a concentrated laser beam. It can ricochet off walls, which is kind of cool. Lasers tears through enemies and ricochets once on hard surfaces. Hip fire, and also upgrades laser to allow multiple ricochets on hard surfaces. The ricochet is not that great, but the fact that the immediate precision damage and the amount of damage this thing does when it hits is ridiculous. If you're not landing precision shots, you're not getting a good payout. You might as well be using Gallarhorn. But if you can always be landing precision shots, this actually does more damage than Gallarhorn does. So that is the whole idea behind it. Land those precision shots and you will do a ton of damage. And yes, it is a heavy. Thunderlord, we've already talked about Nova Mortis and Abaddon, but here's Thunderlord's, the Arc variant. Lightning rounds. This weapon fires faster and more accurately the longer the trigger is held. It also has explosive, kind of like a firefly effect in it as well. If you kill enemies, there's a chance that they will explode and thus hurt everything around it. It also has Feeding Frenzy, which any kill increases reload speed, which is awesome. Also has Perfect Balance and Field Scout. Very solid all-around machine gun. Possibly and arguably the best machine gun in the entire game for most activities. No sense in talking about these two because they are just the Void and Solar variants. Super good advice. We went over this weapon earlier. Just to explain the lore behind it real quick though, Pahanin, the one survivor from the original Vault of Glass run, created this weapon because he was so afraid of being alone. After Kabir and Pradith died in the Vault of Glass, he created the super good advice so that he basically could always feel safe out and always have something reliable or something to rely on out in the wilds, which was this weapon, the most reliable weapon in the game, because you basically never, every single shot you ever hit counts, ever. If you miss, you're gonna get it back. So that was the whole entire design behind this weapon. It's still not a very good weapon, like I said, but it's got some cool lore behind it. Dragon's Breath. I love the way this weapon looks, and I love its skin too. But man, does it suck. Okay, it doesn't completely suck. It does have surplus, which is a good, for pretty much any weapon because it makes all ammo you grab better. It also has Napalm. Release trigger after weapon fire to drop a solar damage napalm canister. See this low velocity? You can actually drop the napalm canister wherever you want, and it just basically lays a bunch of fire on the ground. In year one, this just left a tiny little solar grenade on wherever it impacted that did additional damage after the explosion. It was terrible. That's why they made this into napalm instead. Who's next? You're never going to get this to proc. This only procs if the explosion from the rocket actually kills something, which is very, very rare. So don't even worry about that perk, but surplus is cool. Napalm is cool. It's a cool, interesting weapon, but it's not that great, and it's only PvE based. Now we have Truth. We talked about this, the most aggressive tracking launcher in the game, and this is still true. Grenades and Horseshoes also has that. Prototype True Seeker, rounds fired from this weapon seek their targets aggressively, also has Javelin to increase its velocity, and look at that blast radius and reload speed. Very effective weapon. This is a killer. If you fire at something, there is a 99.9% chance this is going to kill it. Or at least hit it. Heart of Gold and Prototype. Very cool weapon. It used to have 3 rounds in the magazine, but now it only has 1, which is kind of sucky, but whatever. We've been over Galahorn, Nemesis Star, and the Young Wolf's Howl. The only last weapon to talk about is a weapon that never got brought out of year 1, and that is Pocket Infinity. Pocket Infinity is a full auto fusion rifle. This weapon got changed like 4 or 5 times in year 1 because there were times where it was completely useless and overpowered. But it's a full auto fusion rifle. Fires in full auto mode and has a chance to return rounds that miss to the magazine. Very high chance to return rounds that miss as well. Like very high chance. So again, not a shot wasted, but you do only have 3 in the mag. In year 1, however, you can also get extended mag to bring that up to 5. And it also comes with surplus, which is always a good perk. The stability is terrible, but you can mostly manage it as long as you're pulling straight down because it does have a straight up recoil. Basically, if you point this at something, they're gonna die. But it does waste a lot of ammo because this thing doesn't get any more ammo than any other normal fusion rifle. This was never brought back into year 2 and 3 because they could never really properly balance it. It always kind of stood on the thin line between super ridiculously overpowered and completely useless garbage trash. It never really found a place in the middle of that. So that's why why it's the only weapon that never got brought forward. There's one other weapon I haven't shown here, which I have the year 1 variant, is Icebreaker. Never was able to get it in year 3 for some reason. but it acts basically the same. No backpack, cannot be reloaded, but it regenerates ammo over time. In year 1, this was like every 4 or 5 seconds, but now it's like every 8 seconds it gets around. Has a magazine of 6, can't go above that though, so again, can only hold up to 6, has mulligan on it, and also Icebreaker's victims spontaneously combust, dealing damage to others nearby. This applies to head and body shots. It does have a very zoomed in scope. It is a range-based weapon, and it is a good impact, but it's also very unstable. So yeah, there's that. Icebreaker. I don't have the year 3 variant, unfortunately. And then we have the exotic swords, which are Raise Lighter, Bolt Caster, and Dark Drinker. Raise Lighter is for doing a ton of damage on a single target. Bolt Caster is for firing an electric bolt at an enemy from a distance. And Dark Drinker is you basically spin around and do damage and kill everything around you, which is very close in damage to Raise Lighter, but not as concentrated. However, it is known to be the best weapon for killing Axis in the Wrath of the Machine, except for a cluster bomb rocket launcher if you hit in a certain spot and blah blah blah. But that's another. that's not something we're going to even go over. So yeah, those are all of the exotic weapons. Now, what about the exotic armor? Well, I'm going to be very brief about this because I don't want to go over too much. And yes, there's also Titan and Warlock armor. Knucklehead Radar gives you the third eye perk intrinsically. Acrophage Symbiote on your Golden Gun gives you a 4th shot. However, it also reduces the time you can keep Golden Gun up. Mask of the Third Man. Arc blade attacks use less super energy. This is not as good as it sounds. ATS-8 Arachnid. Golden Gun lasts longer and zooms in further when aimed. Although, if you're not used to that, it can actually be very jarring. Celestial Nighthawk only allows you to fire 1 Golden Gun shot, but it does 6 times damage. When stacked with... what is the name of the perk? Forget Deadeye, which also increases the damage. This does a stupid amount of damage and is one of the most powerful attacks in the game. Skyburner's Annex. Chance to create orbs on heavy weapon kills, and with full super, orbs may grant special ammo, which sounds cool in theory. However, I would rather be collecting orbs for my super than for special ammo. And then Graviton Forfeit, which just gives you Shade Step for free on the Night Stalker subclass. It does not work with the other subclasses. It's not like you can have Shade Step on Golden Gun. That's not how that works. Young Ahamkara Spine. Increases Trip Mine Grenade duration, gain an additional Trip Mine Grenade charge. I liked this better when Trip Mine Grenades could actually stick to people, but they can't anymore, so now it's just okay. Don't Touch Me. Taking damage from a melee attack makes you briefly invisible. However, if you fire as soon as you go invisible, you will become... they can see you again. Okay in PvE, not very much in PvP. It's terrible in PvP. Kepri Sting. Invisible while crouching, so you get that perk from the Blade Dancer class, but it works on every subclass. And invisible melee from behind deals 4 times damage, plus melee attacks cause lingering damage, kind of like the Thorn perk. It's just a gimmick weapon. Sealed Ahamkara's Grasp grants an additional melee charge, and melee damage may reload the primary weapon for you. Shinobu's Vow improves Skip Grenade and gain an additional Skip Grenade charge. This made Skip Grenades one of the best grenade types in the game on Blade Dancers. ATS-8 Tarantella is way better than Mask of the Third Man because reduced arc damage from minions of the darkness and arc grenades and arc blade recharge faster. This is not a super noticeable bonus, but it is there, and if you get rid of the ATS-8 after wearing it a while, you will start to notice how slow everything recharges. This is just kind of a net buff to your Blade Dancer subclass. Lucky Raspberry Arc Bolt Grenade chains further, and you always respawn with full grenade energy. Does not give you a second charge, though. Arc Bolt Grenades were way more powerful in year 1, so this was way stronger then. Not so much now. Crest of Alpha Loopy. Supers generate an extra orb and revive and be revived faster. This is a type of exotic that is on every single subclass, or every single class. Titans and Warlocks also have their own variant of it. But yes, supers generate an extra orb, revive, and be revived faster. That's all there is to it. Radiant Dance Machines, basically that gives you the Might of Multitool perk. You move more quickly while aiming your weapon. This plus Might of Multitool makes you insanely hard to hit while you strafe and shoot. Bones of Ao upgrades double jump with an additional jump. Yes, with triple jump, you can have a quadruple jump with this thing. And then Frosties. While sprinting, gain tighter turn radius and faster grenade and melee generation. The grenade and melee regeneration are intrinsic to your sprinting. So yes, while you're sprinting, you can turn faster. This is good if you're trying to shotgun things and stuff like that. And then those are all the year 1 variants. So that's all the hunter ones. Okay, for Warlocks, we've got Skull of Dire Ahamkara. Take reduced damage while using Nova Bomb and improved energy drain abilities. The improved energy drain abilities is already intrinsic in one of the Voidwalker perks, and this does not stack with it, so not a very good helmet. Apotheosis Veil, immediate health, melee, and grenade regeneration on activating your super. So if you've just used all your abilities and you're dying, use this and you're good. Light Beyond Nemesis, this is the helmet that is the same as the Crest of Alphilupi on Hunters. Obsidian Mine, Nova Bomb reduces cooldown of next bomb. The more you kill with your Nova Bomb, the faster it regenerates your super. If you kill like 20 enemies, or actually even like 10 of them with one Nova Bomb, you'll just get another Nova Bomb back. It's actually really cool. Very good for things like the Crota Zen Raid. The Ram, gain increased armor and all Voidwalker melee attacks trigger lifesteal on hit. So you don't have to proc lifesteal, you can get something else, but with the Ram, you can lifesteal anyway. The Stag, once per life, fast supercharge when all teammates die. Chance to spawn with Overshield. This was supposed to be like a Trials of Osiris thing, but it's really not that great. Not to mention, most of the time when you spawn in, you already have an Overshield, so whatever. Astrocyte Verse. Temporary increase to recovery on blink. No, it does not mean you can blink faster. It just means your recovery increases. Like your recovery stat. It's not that great. Sunbreakers, increase the duration of your solar grenade while gaining an additional solar grenade charge. This allows you to your solar grenades to be way more powerful, which is awesome for PvE. And on top of that, again, like I said, they last longer for area control. And you can also proc something else like Touch of Flame or something like that in your final perk tree on Sunsinger rather than the double grenades perk. Claws of Ahamkara gives you a second melee. Nothing Manacles enables scatter grenade tracking. This is the only way to make scatter grenades even useful, and you also gain an additional scatter grenade charge. This makes the scatter grenades a lot better and also very viable in PvP. I've talked about the Impossible Machines, gives you landfall, so you can spec like Superconductor or Ionic Blink. Ophidian Aspect, improved energy drain and weapons ready and reload very quickly. The improved energy drain, obviously that's only for Voidwalker, but the weapons ready and reload very quickly is nice on all subclasses. This is probably the best Warlock exotic of them all. Heart of the Praxic Fire, when Radiance is active, increased agility and decreased ability cooldowns. Your grenade and your melee regenerate faster with this thing. It doesn't really help the grenade as much as you think it does. It actually probably just gives you one more grenade per super. But it does help the melee a lot more. And then also the increased agility is a thing. Void Fang Vestments spawn with full grenade. Axion Bolt gains additional Seeker. This does not mean you get an extra Axion Bolt charge, but it does mean that while the Axion Bolt, instead of chasing after 2 enemies, will chase after 3. And the spawn with full grenade is kind of nice. Gain an additional fusion grenade charge. I mean, if you have fusion grenades, you're going to spec double grenades anyway, so this is basically useless. Purifier Robes, activating radiance from death disorients nearby enemies. We've talked about this. It just blinds things. Good in theory, but not really. Good in practice. Alchemist Rement, chance to gain Glimmer on primary ammo pickup with full super orbs recharge grenade and melee. This is kind of good for Glimmer farming in PvE, like if you really need Glimmer, but otherwise, not that great. Transversive Steps, faster movement speed while crouching. Ammo pickups automatically reload that weapon type. That's it. It's not that great, honestly. It's only while crouching. It's not while running. And ammo pickups automatically reload that weapon type is actually probably the better part of that perk. And last but not least, we have the exotic Titan stuff. So I actually have 2 of these that I don't have, so I'm gonna have to look these up while I do this. But first off, we have Helm of Saint 14, which blind enemies inside your Ward of Dawn. So basically, if any enemy tries to come in, flash a light they can't see. Much more useful than something like the Purifier Robes, honestly. It actually makes your bubble a very safe place to be in, even in PvE. Helm of Inmost Light, gain death from above and headstrong. Basically just makes your Fist of Havoc even more stupid. An Insurmountable Skull Fort, gain additional melee charge. Glass House, Blessing of Light and Weapons of Light lasts longer. This is for all your teammates as well, as long as you've got it equipped. It just makes your Ward of Dawn more effective. Eternal Warrior, gain Unstoppable for Fist of Havoc. Basically, you just can't be killed while using Fist of Havoc, like ever. Empyrean Bellicose, aiming weapons while airborne holds you in place with full super orbs recharge melee. This is basically Angel of Light on... It's essentially, yeah, so it's essentially Angel of Light on a Titan, which is really cool when you think about it, and can be used for some pretty fun stuff. It's actually a lot more effective on a Titan than it is on a Warlock, if I'm being honest. Then we have the Taikonaut, which I do not have. It looks kind of like an old astronaut helmet. Gives any rocket tracking. Now, this like never worked ever for all of Destiny's life cycles. So while it would have been an awesome rocket launcher exotic for rocket launchers that don't have tracking, such as like Dragon's Breath or something, probably would have been pretty cool, but that never really did work. No backup plans. Shotgun kills trigger Force Barrier, and Force Barrier's duration is increased. This is awesome for Crucible and stuff like that. However, it's not as great as you think. While Force Barrier is cool because you get that overshield, this does eat up your melee charge. So unless you've got like a really fast melee charge, this will not proc with shotgun kills unless you have a full melee charge. Ruin Wings heavy ammo drops more often and contains more ammo in each drop. This is awesome. It's basically surplus and gives you tons of heavy, great for raiding all around. ACDL Feedback Fence. Taking damage from a melee attack deals damage in an area around you. You will always win a melee battle with this in PvP. And in PvE, Thrall cannot do anything to you. They'll hit you, but then they'll die. Immolation Fists grants explosive pyre for your sun charge. Hammer of Soul, excuse me, which is pretty darn cool. Then we have the Thagomizers, which grants Amplify and an additional melee charge for Titans. Amplify basically means that you can have a chance of getting your melee back instantly on Striker. Crested Alpha Lupi, very much the same as the Hunter variant. Armamentarian gain an additional grenade charge, possibly one of the best Titan exotics, if not the best. Twilight Garrison, press circle circle while airborne to evade. Yes, this only works in the air. It's not like Shade Step where you do it on the ground. It's airborne only, but yeah, you can basically move in midair with this again, which is kind of awesome. Very ugly looking exotic, but I mean, look, seriously, it looks like a freaking like look at this thing. Look at how ugly this thing is. It looks like a life jacket. Anyway, but other than that, one of the best exotics in the game if you know how to use it properly. MK44 Standicides increase the duration of shoulder charge and Tiger's turn radius while sprinting. The latter part is good. The increased duration of shoulder charge, not so much. As good as shoulder charge is, you don't really need that increased duration ever anyway. Peregrine Greaves, a airborne shoulder charge deals bonus damage. This is a gimmick exotic entirely. It can be kind of fun, like an arc burn with Brawler. Then you can do stupid damage with this thing. But other than that, not that great. Dune Marchers, increase sprint speed, move faster while aimed weapon, tighter sprinting turn radius. It is in every way better than the MK44 Standicides. And the move faster with aimed weapon thing and increased sprint speed is awesome on the Dune Marchers. This is one of my favorite Titan exotics. In fact, it is probably my favorite even over these two. As good as they are, I think this is personally my favorite of the Titan exotics because it just makes you all around more mobile, which is already the thing that's the most broken about Titans in the first place. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for this episode of Let's Play Destiny. A lot of exotics to talk about. A lot of exotics. But we're going to head back to the original account that I've been doing this playthrough with in the next one. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. And I will see you all in the next one.